It's with the great pleasure and enthusiasm that I stand before you today to extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to our esteemed guest of honor, Dr. Azmeer Mohammed, Head of Department of IT, Sri Lanka Technological Campus. Dr. Asmir's journey in the field of education and technology is nothing short of inspiring. With a rich history of leadership roles and significant contributions to academia, he has not only shaped the landscape of education but has also been a driving force behind the integration of multimedia into our academic curriculum. Dr. Asmir's illustrious career includes his pivotal role as the head of Faculty of ICT and Media at the South Asian Institute of Technology and Medicine, the well-known University Sidon, where he pioneered Sri Lanka's first multimedia degree. His visionary approach extends beyond the academic realms as he skillfully negotiated the partnerships with prestigious international institutions such as Pearson and various universities worldwide. Under his guidance, the programs were tailored to meet the demands of the local ICT industry, emphasizing the importance of adapting to the ever-evolving technological landscape. As we welcome Dr. Asmir, we also acknowledge his academic accomplishments. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Mobile Technology, Entrepreneurship, and Small and Medium Enterprises from Aldersgate College, where he continued his demonstrate his commitment to scholarly pursuits. Additionally, he earned an MBA in Management from Western Sydney University, showcasing his dedication to both technology innovation and effective organizational leadership. In his current role as the head of the Department of IT at Sri Lanka Technological Campus, Dr. Asmir continues to demonstrate his prowess in program development, negotiation, and budget management. One of his efforts was the DATE program, which is very popular among the degree seekers of Sri Lanka. His effort not only align with the needs of local ICT industry, but also contribute to the growth of success of our institution. So, my dear students, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Asmir. We will look forward to an enlightening and inspiring interaction with this distinguished leader in the field of multimedia and education. So, thank you. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Semi, for your kind words. Very good. Okay. So when I spoke to Semi a few days ago, I was able to understanding that you are looking at developing products, whether it is to do with hands-on engineering work or software application, mobile apps, anything for that matter. So she said one of the things I can talk about is prototyping. So I was thinking as to what I can talk under the topic of prototyping. Then I realized I also handle a mobile application development, I think for third-year students. There we spoke about prototyping for mobile apps. So then I thought maybe that might be of an interest to you. Because whether it is a mobile app or a website or a desktop application, prototyping pretty much is the same, right? So I thought maybe I'll start the program with that. Some people might also think, okay, why waste time on prototype? Not really. Prototyping is not a waste. It's actually evaluates your idea with the others. You might have great ideas yourself, but then until you validate that, it's just an idea in your head, right? Before we start, I'm going to give you a link. This is a 2-minute video clip from Google. Actually, this is just one of the Google, what do you call it, building blocks about why design, why prototype is important, right? So in fact, this guy, somebody's asking the head of design, what are you doing? And so he said, I do design. And then to which they say, okay, why design? I mean, what is there to design? It's already there. So he said, well, hold on, I'll show you what we actually do. So let me put that into the chat window here. Okay. That is the chat. Chat. Right. It's a 2-minute window. Can we spend 2 minutes, please? Have a look at it. And once you're done with that, please raise your hands. Okay, I will wait for that. It's in a chat window. Once you're done with that, please raise your hand. Okay, fantastic. Right. I suppose that would have been a good introduction as to why, although it talks about design, but I'm sure you also got the picture, right? Why prototyping is important as well. So if you start from the Google logo itself, you must have seen how it started off with a very primitive one, and then how went through multiple iterations to get to where it is. And if you look at everything else, how their apps start and how they transfer from one to another, it's all interconnected, isn't it? It's all interconnected. So the word we use is consistency, right? So there is a consistency of going one to another, right? So let's see what is the role in prototyping in this whole picture. As Swami said about myself, so I actually come from the industry. So I've been in the software and hardware development for a long time. I was in Sri Lanka, in the US, in Europe, and a few other places, building products for the industry. And then I joined the academia to bring what I've gained from the outside to share with you and see what we can make out of that. Okay, so here is a very dangerous statistic. What does it say? It says 66% of technology projects, right? 66%, that is more than half of it, end in partial or total failure. So what does that mean? Half the products we are building fail, which is staggering, right? It's a major problem. More than half is failing. So why is that, right? Why is that? So let's see what are some of the reasons and what is prototype got to do with all these failures. So if you talk about the word prototype, it's a process of creating preliminary model. What does that mean? Preliminary mean something before you go to the production, right? It's a sample of a product or a system to test its design, functionality, and also more than anything, feasibility. Now, what does feasibility mean? Feasibility is about whether it is possible, right? You don't know whether something is possible until you try that, okay? Or until you have a conversation with somebody about an idea. So you may not have anything. You start with talking to someone, right? In fact, there is a famous method called the Socrates method. There was this philosopher, I think about 2,500 years, maybe 3,000 years ago in Greece, where Rome and Greek philosophers, we talk about them a lot, where he said, find someone and discuss your idea, right? And through the discussion, you will find the truth. So in this case, since we are talking about software development, you can still do it. You can speak to somebody and say, look, I have this idea. What do you think? So especially when you speak to someone who has some experience, they might share their experience with you about the idea. Now, I'm also supervising some of the final year projects. What I have seen here is now people come and just say, look, for the first time in the world or for the first time in Sri Lanka, we are building this. Now, what does that mean? It means that they have not done their research properly. They have not studied history, maybe, right? In fact, in research, there is a major component called literature review. In literature review, what we do is we go back in the history to find out what other people have done similar things. Are there any similar things done, right? So that way we can actually cut down a lot of research work because it's already done. Once you look at it, perhaps if you look at a lot of it, then you will figure out, okay, what is missing there. But if you have not done your literature review or the history review, you might not know what are the mistakes they have done before, right? So you will be again building your own prototype, your own testing, your own product, and that will be, will be coming under that 66% of failures because homework is not done, right? So prototype is a mechanism where you can actually take away a lot of trouble. Yeah, whether it is done previously or not, you can cut down a lot of time that will be wasted in the future. Okay. In another sense, we can say prototyping is to visualize You have to visualize something, right? Visualize concepts, gather feedback. Now, from whom? Your actual customers, perhaps. So you can get feedback from them, and you can refine your ideas before full-scale development, right? So, as you notice, doing a prototype is actually a very important and an interesting one because you're showing it to the real customers. You're getting the real feedback, right? So with that, you can tweak things, you can change things. I mean, it might be colors, it might be layout, it might be anything for that matter. Now, that introduction video, you notice the amount of changes everything went through, isn't it? Whether it is the logo, whether how they place their website search engine box, whether they how they built their icons, everything was going through multiple iterations of changes and prototypes. All right. So even big companies, small companies, they all go through this concept visualization or prototyping, right? Now, why does it matter? Well, there are a lot of reasons. Number one being early visualization. What do you mean by early visualization? You get to see it before you go into full-blown programming or manufacturing. So better you see it, earlier you see it, it is less expensive to make the changes. Okay, so if you do the changes later, at a later stage, if there are any modification come in, it will be very expensive. So it's always good to do your modification in the early stage of building the product. So the best stage of getting this done is your prototyping stage. And it also gives us user feedback. A very good example was Microsoft Xbox game controller, right? Now, before Microsoft, there were so many other game controllers. There was Nintendo, there was PlayStation, and there was Atari, and so many other things were there. But Microsoft wanted to go back and do something completely new. So they made hundreds of prototypes, got lots of user feedback about the weight of it, how you feel, how you hold it, lots of different things, whether you need a rechargeable battery or should you plug it to the USB cable. So all those things are actually feedback. And with that, they made multiple prototypes and then arrived at the best console controller. And the last point also very important, risk mitigation. What does that mean? Identifies the design flaws and challenges early. So when you're doing prototyping, you understand the problems very early, right? So if you identify the problem later, it puts a lot of risk on it. Yeah. When you identify that earlier, it's cheaper and less risky for everyone. So what are the kinds of varieties we have when it comes to prototyping? Now, I was also talking to a few others about why many people come up with prototypes, but then it fails at the production, right? One reason is they forget to throw it away. Prototype, as it says, is a prototype, right? If you don't throw it away, if you try to tweak that further and try to complete the prototype, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. The good example is there are lots of different tools when it comes to software prototyping or mobile app prototyping or web prototyping. Things like Adobe XD, Figma, there are so many things. So most of these tools also provide a feature where you can generate the code. Actually, it's good and bad. It's good, you can study the code and learn something, or the other, and you can bring those learning to your actual production. That is a good side of it. The bad side of it, many people take it for granted. They take the code and then go with that. And they try to keep on changing that code into the production, which is a big mistake, I would say, right? Prototype is a prototype. You just use it and you throw it away and start afresh when it comes to production. In fact, we use the word rapid prototyping. Yeah, rapid prototyping is all about doing some design and just throw it away and then start afresh, right? So it might be a hardware thing, it might be a little software thing that you are looking at. Now, let me talk about software rapid prototyping. Now, when you're building a, let's say, an application of, let's say, you're finally a project, right? Your project, if you break it down, you will have lots of small components. Let's say, for example, very common one is user registration or user authentication. Very common module on all the applications. Now, different application frameworks give you different solutions. Now, if you're using Java, you need to go with perhaps a framework where it gives you the component for registration, login, password forget, maybe social media login, stuff like that. If you take, let's say, Python or PHP, or anything for that matter, let's say C#, these things are very, very important. So rather than, let's say, of course, you can write that also, but then there are different solutions, there are different frameworks available. So what you can do is you can build a small prototype and see whether your login system is working, right? Now, don't go with the first one. Try a few things and see which one works better. Okay. So this is prototyping. This is rapid prototyping. So if you go with the first one and think, right, okay, this is the best, okay, I'm going to use it forever. Well, then you have not evaluated the rest of it. Okay. The second type is called evolutionary prototyping. Now, that's where you will find something good, but you keep on refining it. Okay, so you maybe start small, but remember, you must know inside out of what is happening there inside the product. Now, if it is for coding, evolutionary prototyping is not bad. That's okay, right? But you need to be careful when you're using generators, like code generators. There are prototyping tools where it generates the code for you. Now, if you don't understand all the differences and the complexities of this code that you generated, that's a big problem, right? Same I can say about other tools like XD or Figma, which gives you very complex prototypes. Another one is Adobe Dreamweaver, where you can generate the website completely out of nothing. It has its own JavaScript modules and libraries and various things. And it gives you a fantastic website, which is fine, which is very good. But then when it comes to changes and upgrading and maintaining, it's a nightmare unless you know it very well. Now, as you know, web development contains three things, right? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's it. But there are so many flavors. Now, if you take CSS, there is Bootstrap, there is Tailwind, then there are Prototype, there is, so many other things out there. Similarly, for JavaScript, there is jQuery, there is React, there is Angular, there are so many things. They're all JavaScript, but foundation is just three: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if you generate your website using a tool like Dreamweaver as a prototype, remember it is a prototype. And if you know Dreamweaver very well, you can go inside and look at the code and see, try to understand what is going on there. If you understand, that's all right. But be careful about using that as an evolutionary prototype. Now that's going to be a big problem. Third one is incremental prototyping. Now, this is something I think is very useful and also very friendly, because you build small parts in a separate sort of situations, and then you bring it together by way of documented evidence of components, right? Like I said, it might be a user management system. There might be, let's say, connecting the remote server module, maybe a list view and a detail view. So you build small pieces together, right? We call it functional segments. And then you start putting it together. Now, all in all, the biggest lesson here is you must understand the code if you're coding here, right? Don't rely on the generators. Don't rely on the prototyping tools. You will have trouble in the future if you don't understand the code generated coming from here. Okay? අපි මේකට සිංහලෙන් කියනවා ආලෙන් වෙලෙනවා කියලා ප්‍රොටෝටයිප් එකත් එක්ක. කාලේ අන්දයි කියලාත් අපි කියනවා. ඒතර මේ ප්‍රොටෝටයිප් එකත් එක්ක ආදරය කරන්න පටන් ගත්තාම අපිට ඒක විසි කරන්න හිතෙන්නේ නැහැ. So we get blinded. We try to somehow, without throwing, somehow do something. මොකක් හරි කරලා මේක ගොඩ දාමු කියලා අපි හිතන්නේ. So, but then, okay, you might win, you might not win. Don't forget it's a prototype, right? Then comes the types of prototypes, right? There are paper prototypes, wireframes, clickables, and physicals, and a lot of different things are there. What do you mean by a paper prototype? Now, these are mostly hand-drawn sketches or mock-ups, we say. Now, if it is a mobile app, you start with a large sheet, maybe A3 or something, and then start putting boxes, and then start a navigation system. So you can start, let's say, for example, launching screen, and then it takes to registration screen. Maybe if they are already a customer, okay, there is a login button. And then from there, you go to the dashboard. From the dashboard, there may be a menu. From the menu, you have multiple choices available. So you select from where to go from one screen to another screen, right? So when you look at that one single sheet, you have a comprehensive idea about what is going on with my project. Okay. We also use something called mind maps for this. So a mind map is a single sheet of paper showing all the possibilities, right? So I think the best one is to have a whiteboard. If you have a whiteboard where you can draw and erase and draw again, and come up with something on the board, right? And then do the same thing maybe on a piece of paper. Once you have a good idea, a good clarity about what is going on, validate that with somebody else. Remember, we have to go to somebody else and say, look, here's a plan. What do you think? So they might give you a different view. They might say, okay, look, why don't we show this screen first and then go to the next screen? Or they might say, okay, why don't you couple these two together because they have a similar functionality, or something like that. So prototyping, paper prototyping allows you to do it faster and very easily. Yeah. And then comes wireframes. What does that mean? Wireframe is mostly boxes with connecting lines. So you have boxes, each one connected through wires. That's why we call it wireframes. And we also call it low fidelity prototyping. We generally use a computer program to do this. It shows which one is connected to which one. And again, we have a sort of an idea about what is going on there. The advantage of a wireframe versus a paper prototype is with wireframe, you can navigate from one screen to another one, which takes us to the next one, clickable prototypes, where you go a little bit advanced from the wireframe, where you can bring in stuff like, say, colors, maybe image components and stuff like that, where they see the wireframe, but a bit lively than the basic boxes. And you can also click and go to various places. Well, it doesn't work, as in there is no code behind it. It's only visual. But the customers will get a very good understanding of what is going on with the program. And the last one is the physical prototype. Now, this doesn't make any sense for software because there is nothing physical. But this is something we can use it for any physical thing, like I said, the game controller, or maybe some device that you're building, right? So that can have a digital form. Yeah. There are 3D printers, for example, available to try out your prototype. It can be made out of wood, plastic, anything for that matter. Yeah. So you got to see the feel for it. Now, car manufacturers do it all the time. They use clay. They use clay to make the car so that they can feel for it. They can sort of get the feel for the size, feel for the curves, feel for the whole shape of the car, right? And there are so many other people use different ways of physical prototyping. I'll share you some examples. Here's an example where someone is drawing by hand and then also building something out of maybe cardboard or piece of woods, just to get a feel for it, right? How does it work? How does it look like? And as you can see here, he has a lot of stuff drawn on paper first. Yeah. So these are called perspective lines. These are perspective lines because this is a 3D gadget. I mean, 3D element he's playing along. So he's drawing multiple views, top view, side view, isometric view, stuff like that. Now, unless you are building something 3D, this doesn't make any sense to us. Most of the software work or mobile app work is 2D. Okay. Now, before we get into the prototyping, there are a couple of things we need to look at. One, what is the problem or what is the opportunity we are trying to solve here? Okay. You may be building a software application, right? Let's say you want to build a software application for students at SLTC, right? So what is the problem here now? You need to be very clear about that. Or like some of the projects we were looking at from your final year senior students, let's say the planters are having an issue of collecting data about, let's say, the pickups, or somebody's renting their vehicles, there is a problem of dropping off the vehicle. So that's the problem. That's the opportunity rather, actually, right? So now you need to, again, speak to someone and say, right, okay, here's the problem. And how can we convert this into a software application, right? How can we make a business out of this? Now, in order to do that, I need to start talking about all the problems, all the issues, all the scenarios that it contains. And after that, let's build the prototype. Okay, so you need to generate a lot of ideas for this. Where do we start? Where do we what do we do in the middle? What do we do at the end? Okay, so what are the roles we have here? Who are the stakeholders working on this project? Right, and then what kind of prototype are we going to make? Is it going to be a mobile app? Is it going to be a desktop application? Is it going to be a web-based application? So how does it look like? Are you downloading? Are you using it on the web? Stuff like that. And once you have the prototype, there goes the testing of the prototype. Again, you need to go to the real customers, not your friends, but the real customers who will use this. They will be the best critiques, right? They have the biggest problems of using it. So we are trying to solve a problem that they have, right? That was the problem in the first step. So now we have a prototype. All we need from our friends, actually our customers, is using that and telling us what they think about it. Right? Remember, this is a prototype. Okay, so you don't change your customers to use the prototype. You do the other way around. You change the prototype so that the customer will use it. So that is the last step. Iterate and improve. So you listen to the customer, find out the problem, come back to the desk, change it again, go back to the customer. And so you keep doing that again and again. Okay. So when it comes to the steps, identify requirement, how does it work? Clearly define the project's goals and requirements. Now, I see this as a very common problem in many students. They have just an idea about a product for your final year project, but they don't know how to refine that. Yeah, because they have never had a discussion with someone to refine this. So that's something you need to have in order to refine your idea or the project. Okay, so which is very important. Number two is designing the prototype. Once that is done, how do you design the prototype? We start with a preliminary design, focusing only on the key features. So your first prototype doesn't have all the details. It only has the main features. And then once you're happy with it, again, you have to, every time you do something, you have to get validation from your customers. And then you build another prototype. Okay. Maybe first you do a paper prototype and then you use the computer and then do a wireframe perhaps, right? Or you do a little bit advanced than the wireframe. And then you take it back to the client and show it to them and say like, okay, we have another version here. So what do you think now? Right? So test and evaluate again. And then refine and repeat. Now, when it comes to product design, there is a concept called design thinking, right? Design thinking is about going to the customer's side and try to empathize with the customer, right? අපි කස්ටමර්ගේ පැත්තට ගිහලා කස්ටමර්ත් එක්කම බලනවා මොකද්ද මේ කස්ටමර්ට තියෙන දුක ප්‍රශ්නේ මොකද්ද, right? දුක් විඳින්න හේතුව මොකද්ද මේ කස්ටමර්ගේ. So we try to understand why. It's called the pain point. We try to understand the pain point of the customer, right? And then it goes through multiple iterations, and one of the iterations there is called prototyping, right? So there, now I put 5 steps here. Number 1, keep the user in mind, user or the customer in mind. And then, now when you're taking the prototype, the customer, okay, so you have to plan the scope of testing. So you're giving a prototype to the customer, and you need to also say, okay, here's the scope of testing, right? So if he says, no, when I press this button, I also want to order pizza, and then I want a Coca-Cola to come here or water bottle on my table, that's beyond the scope. So you have to very clearly say, okay, this is the scope of this testing, right? And what is number 3? It says take action and fail fast. Okay, why fail? Well, failing early is actually cheaper than failing late. So that is why we make prototypes. So we give something to the customer and we wait for them to give some feedback, and then very quickly identify what is wrong in our prototype, which is very cheap. Cheaper to fix it now than later. Okay. Number 4 is where we talked about paper prototyping, wireframing, and then advanced prototyping. So you have to figure out where do you start for your prototyping. Are you going to start with the paper, or are you going to start immediately with the advanced one? Now, I've seen again many students jump to the tool like Figma or WXD. It's all right, but it's good if you can use pencil and paper at least first, and then go to the tool. Otherwise, you start using the tool and then again, you fall in love with your prototype. You don't want to throw it away. So you try to keep meddling with that and try to change what you have. But if you have pen and paper, you can throw it away very quickly without any trouble, and then start again. Right. Number 5 is also very, very important. So this is where we are recording the questions. Now, in fact, this is called brainstorming, right? There is this concept called brainstorming where you put all the ideas out. So in fact, that requires many people, not one, many people. We have to involve the customers, involve the technical people, involve the design people, everyone to the meeting, and then let everybody put their ideas out. And you don't filter ideas. You record everything. Good or bad, we don't care. We record everything. At the end of the meeting, you try to then figure out, okay, what are these ideas? And then there you group things. You put these ideas into groups and then take it out and see, okay, how much of my prototype is now require changing because of these ideas, right? Or do we need to throw it completely out and then build a new prototype, which is fine, right? Which is fine. So these steps actually give us a chance to fail fast, right? Fail fast. So let me give you another little clip here. All right, I'm giving you another video clip. It's a short one. This is about paper prototyping. Okay, so please have a look at it. And once you're done, raise your hands. All right, thank you. So that shows paper prototyping, yeah. So some people might think, okay, why are we even bothering doing that? Isn't it a waste of time? Not really. You will really learn some tricks when you start showing it to your customers, right? Uh, they will come up with all kinds of things that we never imagined, which is fantastic. That's the feedback we need, right? So that you can go back to your desk and then start making it better. Remember, don't fall in love with your prototype. You are supposed to throw it away. Okay, you're supposed to throw it away. Don't try to change the customer to fit the prototype. It should be the other way around. You have to change the prototype so that the customers will be happy to use the product. After all, end of the day, it is the customer who's going to use the product, not you. Right? So here are some tools available in the market for prototyping. For wireframing, we have Sketch from Google, I think Figma, then there is Adobe XD. Figma is very famous because there is a free version available. XD also a pretty advanced tool as part of Adobe Creative Cloud. It is available. In fact, these tools also allow you to generate code and also allow you to navigate from one screen to another, stuff like that. So it's actually a good tool to have once you're done with your paper prototyping. And then if you want to go a little beyond that, if you have complex projects where you need pretty complicated prototyping, then we have things like InVision, Azure, Proto.io for stuff like that. Now, InVision, in fact, has a mobile app also. You can design your mobile application, let's say on the computer, and then run it through InVision. Rather than building a separate mobile application, InVision will run it through their simulator. So that way you are saving a lot of time, right? Remember, the whole point of doing prototype is save time from your future disasters. It will save time from your future disasters. So any tool that allows you to do that, you should jump at it. And then the last one is code-based prototyping. Now, nowadays, there is a concept called no code, or there's one called low code way of building things, right? For example, if you're building a mobile app, there is Flutter Flow, right? Where you can drag and drop components and build your mobile application. And in fact, it runs on your mobile also through their app. Yeah. So stuff like that can be used in order to build your app view. Now, if you're using Bootstrap for your web design, then there is a Bootstrap app builder where you can drag and drop your screen components and build something to the screen. Same thing is available for desktop application also. So whether you're using Microsoft, C# or Java, there is something called the GUI builders available for these platforms where you can drag and drop and have a very quick prototype and then show it to the customer to get some feedback. And then what are some of the best practices when it comes to building prototypes? First, number one, involve the stakeholders as early as possible. Remember, I've been saying, take the prototype, go to the customer, show it to them. So when you say stakeholders, we are not only talking about customers, we are talking everybody. It can be designers, it can be coders, it can be marketing staff, it can be anyone who has any stake or any interest in your product. You need to involve them and show it to them and get their feedback. Okay. Now, for example, you can also bring in some age differences like children, if it is applicable for them, young people, let's say middle age versus older people. So, for example, if you bring in older people, they might say, look, this font is too small. I can't read this. Or these colors are too sort of dull. They can't distinguish between blue and gray, for example. Or if you mix blue and green, that doesn't go properly also. Or if you deal with very young people, they might say, okay, these colors are very dull. We need bright colors, right? So this is the feedback you need. So you take the prototype, you take the color schemes to your respective customers and get the feedback as early as possible, right? But then having said that, remember, start simple. So the simplest one is paper prototype. And then you can go perhaps to a wireframe. And in fact, from paper prototype itself, you need to get feedback. Okay. And keep adding the complexities as we move on with the design. So iteration, doing again and again and again is very, very important with prototype. I'm telling again, don't fall in love with your prototype. Don't try to keep same prototype and try to do changes here, changes there, and try to sell them. It works if you are doing iterative prototyping, but most of the time you just throw it away and start fresh, right? So here is the summary. Early visualization, user feedback, risk mitigation contribute to the successful outcome. The word here is early, right? So you're showing as early as possible before you launch. Now, here is something about software prototyping. Okay, so it's a cycle. You see, you start from the customer, show something to the customer, get some feedback, and that is used to develop and refine your prototype. Yeah, and then it goes into testing the prototype by the customer again. So that comes back as customer feedback, and it goes into the prototype refining again. So it's a cycle. When are we coming out of the cycle? When we figure out everything is fine and the customer thinks, right, I can do my job now with the application. So this is good. That's the time we stop the prototype and move on to the next stage. So here's another image, another chart showing some of the processes available in software building prototyping, right? Step number one is analyzing the landscape. What does that mean? Remember literature review? Going back in the history, trying to find out, has anyone done this before? Okay, if you say no, that means maybe you're not done your homework well. So you need to go back and check. Ask the librarian, ask the people in the industry, ask someone who has done it before. Is this solution or is this product done before? And then define the requirements. Figure out what is the requirement for this project. And then also understand the competitors. Who are the competitors in the market? What do they have? And what are you going to have that they don't have? Or what is it that you are trying to improve? So you need to have a very good, clear understanding of that also. And then start your initial prototype. It's a rough blueprint, we say. A very basic version. And then step number 5, take it to the client. People who are going to use your application. And sit with them, ask them questions, get their feedback, right? Bring it on and then understand where you want to make the changes, revise and revamp. Yeah, so it's a cycle again. Now, here are some advantages of software prototyping. Okay, it gives you a head start. It gives you a very clear vision. It gives you instant feedback. And it also gives you quick outcome and also cost effective. See, rather than you build the whole product and then going and showing it to the customer and say, my God, this is not what I expected. Or I want to do this also, right? Then you have to go back all the way and start redoing the code completely from the beginning. You don't do that with prototype. You show it to them very frequently and get the feedback as it comes as well. Now, let's look at some real world applications where they use prototyping extensively. Of course, there are so many thousands of companies out there doing prototyping. I picked up these two because I have some example to show it to you. What do you think is this board? Can anybody tell me? What do you think is this board? You can see there are two wireless antennas here. There are some connectors, lots of connectors. There's another green board here. Then there are some more connectors. Okay. And there's a screen here. This is the Apple phone, iPhone version 1, iPhone prototype. So it looks like a big motherboard, right? Yeah, it is a motherboard. So this is how they started. Yeah. So each connector here can host expansion, whether it is memory expansion or feature expansion, stuff like that. Right? So once you have a prototype showing, yes, the phone is in fact working, yeah, you go to the next stage, miniaturization. How do you make this whole big board so small that you can put it into a phone like that? Okay. Here's another one. This is the first Android phone. Oh, by the way, Android phone came before Apple. And at that time, the most famous device in the market was the BlackBerry phone. So those days, all the phones had a big screen and a big keyboard. Actually, not a big screen. I would say 50-50, right? Top part is screen, bottom half is the keyboard. So this was the first Google phone manufactured by HTC. And Apple saw this, of course. And then Apple changed it completely. They threw away the keyboard, got the entire screen as the input and also the output. Right? Okay, so what are some of the challenges in prototyping? Number one is time constraint. Well, I told you we need to do the prototype. The prototype itself is going through multiple levels. You start with paper, then wireframe, then high fidelity. You know, all these things take time. And you also need to take it to the customer, sit down with them, understand, come back, change, go back, again, come back. So all these things take time. But in a project management, you need to give time for this, right? You have to give time so it is part of your project plan. Okay. Now, the biggest problem with project management is scope creep. What does that mean? Remember earlier we agree on certain features, but when you go back and show it to the customer, and then we start reflecting, when you start talking about these things, you will realize, okay, we need another feature here, we need another feature there, which means your scope now start expanding. So your original estimate, time estimate, might have a problem now. Okay, so that is called scope creep. Although we spend a lot of time designing our scope and timing, sometimes we may have to adjust that also. So your project timeline might have a issue as well. Now, before I finish this, let me also give you another interesting claim. I can show you an example from myself. Okay, let me go to a browser here. All right, so this is something that I was responsible for very, very long time ago, 1999, I believe. I was toying with, at that time, Bluetooth and some hardware stuff, trying to connect one of my home-built robot to my computer. So the company I work for saw what I was doing, and they said, okay, why don't you build something that can be integrated to the software platform we were building? So this was my first prototype. On the left is the CPU board, and then we have a LCD screen. We have a homemade keyboard with some buttons, and then laser printed keyboard top. Here we have a optocoupler to couple with the light bulb. So it's a very early stage prototype. What I wanted to show them was this light bulb can be controlled using the computer here. And also the programs can be loaded from another host computer like a laptop or a desktop. So it worked. And then from there, okay, so that's me in the middle. Two of the other pairs who work with me are here. Then we came to this one. So here we have a ARM-based 16-bit processor here. And then this is Sri Lanka's first Bluetooth access point, along with our custom keyboard and a large LCD screen here. So that was our second prototype. You can see, the plastic, homemade plastic case, still large. Oh, there's an advertisement. This was our next prototype where we built this motherboard. And this is the expansion board where you can plug it here. And we have a larger graphical LCD. It works on 2 batteries now. And this is the memory expansion board. So this is our third prototype. And then we got this one here, our next prototype. Again, homemade keyboard and a plastic case. And now we can actually hold in our hand the gadget, right? This is inside. So we were able to put the motherboard in, memory expansion card here, and it actually works on 2 batteries. And this was the casing that we were giving away. That's the team behind it. And this was another prototype we made. It ran a Linux version. It was running Sinhala, Tamil, and English, and also Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. That's the final product, right? This was an old product that I worked on, so I thought I'll show it to you to show the importance of prototyping. So it went through multiple iterations. It took about 1 year to start from that light bulb to this stage. Okay. So my objective today was to take you through the importance of prototyping, whether it is a hardware gadget or a software gadget. So we went through the importance of that. If you distill it down, the whole thing is about involving all the stakeholders as early as possible. And then there are different levels of prototyping, the paper version, wireframe version, and the high fidelity version. And it is an absolute necessary to do the prototyping because that will save a lot of time from your future actions. Okay, so I hope it's useful. If you have any questions, you can raise it to me now, or you can drop a message to me.
So thank you very much, Dr. Azmeer. Hello.
All right.
Yes,
Any questions from the students?
Yeah. So my dear students, if you have any questions, you can raise to Dr. Azmeer.
I'll give you one final video to have a look. You can take your time and have a look at it once the meeting is over. It's in the chat box. All right, Sevi, then all the very best for everyone. I hope it's useful.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your inspiring knowledge and also what you have taught to our students. So I think they have motivated and they got an idea how what are the prototyping techniques and how they can be implemented for their project. And thank you very much for allocating allocating a time for us, and with the with very quick notice you have accepted our invitation. So thank you very much, Dr. Azmeer, for that as well.
All right.
And okay.
Okay, good day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye, sir.